guys, welcome to the podcast. On this episode, I have Chris Haueter, who is, as many of you all know, one of the first American black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Chris was really awesome to join me on the podcast, and we really kind of got to delve in about the genesis and the beginning of Jiu-Jitsu, how it started in the States, and how he got into it, what Jiu-Jitsu has kind of meant to him, and how it's starting to evolve and grow worldwide. And Chris has just got a ton of knowledge and history, and it was just amazing to talk to him. And I did have some difficulties with sound quality, so the sound quality isn't great for the podcast, but guys, it's definitely worth the listen because Chris is just so much knowledge. I just kind of kept my mouth shut and just listened to him go, man, because it was just amazing to hear all of his knowledge and everything he's experienced, and how he has seen and helped Jiu-Jitsu grow. So, guys, thank you all for checking out the podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
You are now listening to the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist Podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm at my gym right now where I train. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and I started scrambling for a spot to. I ended up going outside, if you can see. I'm actually in the back over here.
Gyms are often kind of loud places.
Man, yeah, I was going to do it at home, but I wanted to get in to train. I hadn't been able to train for about a week and a half. I just had a new baby, so I was like, I got to be able to train right after. So it's been a little while. So
those new babies are life-changing events.
Yes. Honestly, I stumbled upon you because you've had a few videos on YouTube, and you've said some things that kind of were pretty powerful and kind of resonated with me really well, because you've been at it for a long time. So I just kind of want to know how you found Jiu-Jitsu, just to start.
Here's the, I wouldn't say it's the shortest story, but it's the condensed version.
Okay.
I've been like a lot of guys who are in martial arts, for some reason, for a lot of reasons, I've always been fascinated with martial arts, and by that I mean the broader term of martial arts, which basically loosely can be translated into military arts, which include everything from unarmed hand-to-hand combat to weapons and modern warfare, ancient warfare. It's just one of those things. I think it's common that male Homo sapiens are very interested in combat, and various things and events in my childhood and stuff probably added to my interest in that, and I was, for various reasons, I won't get heavily into it, when I was a young child, I stuttered so bad that for a couple of years I barely even spoke. And language, of course, is a very powerful thing that humans have. It's arguably what separates us from other animals, is that we have language which can pass down large information, bits of knowledge to next generations, to youth, to each other. We communicate in hunts, unlike we might not be the fastest animal, but we communicate well and know how to trap and plan long term and all. So language, of course, when you are a person who has a language impairment, a stuttering or whatever, you feel often quite powerless. And I believe that at the core, at the root instinct core, the reason why we initially seek martial arts knowledge comes from a feeling of a lack of power. Either we're, it's also one of those things where human offspring have such a long childhood, such a long period of time in which we are the smaller, more vulnerable person.
Uh-huh.
If you think about how long it takes for an aware male child, say around 3, or woman, or whatever, to grow up and actually have physical power over their immediate surroundings, it's 14 to 16 years until you actually have that. So a large impact and a large period of our most formative period of our life is spent being relatively powerless. And I think that lends to a drive in humans to seek various forms of power and control.
Okay.
And I mean, I was born in 1964, and I came of age in the tail end of the hippie generation, and it's kind of like what much is happening now in the world in America. A lot of turmoil on the streets and opposing ideologies everywhere. And so I grew up with that in that kind of radical period, and then I came of age in the 80s, and I of course, like a lot of guys, you hear this a lot. I think it's a very common thing, especially for martial artists of my generation, is we grew up watching Asian martial arts movies and film. We're fascinated with how cool it was, how powerful it was, how the arc of the story, the hero's the journey, finding a master, learning some secret martial arts skill that then you can suddenly deploy, and there's even ones that I mean, even though you know it's not real, you know you can fly through the air and all this stuff. And so I grew up that, and I was really into nunchucks and all that stuff growing up. And so I did karate as a kid, kung fu at the neighboring rec center. Had a really cool kung fu instructor, and the kung fu guy didn't know I was going to the karate school. The karate guy didn't know I was going there, and so then along came, and the thing is, for various reasons of my personality type, I got in a lot of fights, and I was an easy target because I was light, responded to insult very quickly and easily, and so I got in a lot of fights, and this sounds like, I mean, ethically, I don't know where this stands, but the honesty is I learned a lot about human male conflict before I was the age of about 12. From both observing adults and having my own childhood brawls. I spent a lot of time in the principal's office, in trouble. One could say that if I want to make it sound perfectly rosy and clean, I was the one who was always being picked on and defending myself, but the fact is I probably joined in on other stuff as well. And I just caused a lot of trouble. And I liked other sports, and I remember my dad saying shortly after he stopped drinking when I was in 7th grade, because he loved watching sports all the time on the TV. He didn't really like to play sports with me. He would be hung over watching sports on TV. And he would always say, all sports are metaphors of either combat or the hunt. And going back from hurdles and the javelin is like clearly the hunt or combat. Being able to run and throw an accurate spear was a very necessary skill for thousands of years as a human. being able to throw a rock the size of a ball at 80 miles an hour and hit a target is it means you'll eat that night. And if you can't throw that rock and hit your rabbit in the head, you don't eat. And,
right.
I mean, and he would also say, and the purest of all of the sports is wrestling and boxing.
Okay.
And so I always, grew up with a sense of the importance of physical combat. Even though I would say largely, and my mother and my more educated, and my parents were educated, that those are, the more primal part, and then really an education is the key to success. So I always had this conflicting war between what should I do with my life when what I love is stuff like martial arts, military, arresting bad guys, all that drive. And then I've also always had the science/science fiction, fantasy, philosophy, art drive.
Right.
And, so I balanced those. So anyways, I fast forward, I was in the Marine Corps Reserves at the time. I'm doing Muay Thai boxing. Won a pro fight. I won the fight, but it really hurt. That's like after it's done for 3 days, you feel like you've been run over by a car. Broke my shin. In there, and it seemed like such a hard path. So at the same place I trained Muay Thai, they did the Jeet Kune and Kali, and I started becoming a little more involved in that. And about probably 6 months to a year into that, I was kind of in the advanced Jeet Kune down in Osanto pipeline to. That was when I decided that I was going to go over to the local college and start wrestling again, because even as a kid, when I fought, even though I would try to practice karate or kung fu and all that, I would initially start in my schoolyard brawls trying to use my karate or whatever it was. And my natural instinct was always a clincher and a grappler. I would always, once I got hit, I would want to close that gap.
Right.
And clinch and bring him on the ground. So I knew that my natural strengths were the grappling, and my natural weaknesses were the outside of that range art.
Okay.
Or what often called the kicking, punching, striking range art, although even though there's that on the ground as well.
Right.
So I did high school wrestling, and I shamefully admit I still fought a lot in high school. I thought fighting was cool, and I won. The fights in which I won were won because I would shoot in, bring him on the ground, and so again, now I'm 21 years old. I'd recently quit partying because I was a really bad partier, like really, really bad. I was probably heading for the morgue or prison, and I stopped and got really involved in martial arts and went to the local college wrestling room to start that art again, and ran into Mitz Yamashita, who was the Aikido club instructor, and I saw him instructing mount escapes, wearing gis. And I looked at it, and I remember my initial thought was, I didn't realize that Aikido had a ground component. I thought it was this flowery, kind of cool philosophy, but poor application art. And I asked him, I'm like, Mitz, I don't think that would work on a real wrestler. And he said, well, why don't you try it? So, he mounted me being, of course, like an untrained, and you got to understand, this is 1988, so the guard's still completely unheard of in the States and all that.
Right.
Virtually unheard of, I should say. And, I try to escape, I expose my back, I get choked, I try again, I expose an arm, I get armbarred, and I'm like absolutely so impressed and shocked that this smaller, lighter, older, but Japanese man is destroying me with my wrestling skills, my Marine Corps attitude, and my years of brawling on playgrounds, bars, and streets and barracks, right? So I'm like, I gotta learn Aikido. And he says, this isn't Aikido, and technically I'm not really supposed to be instructing this. But here's the guy who can. And he wrote down Horion Gracie's number on my math homework. And I remember I went home immediately, and I called that number, and Horion answered immediately. I found out he was like 4.5 blocks away, and I scheduled my first private, and that's how it started.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and when I began my first coach was Hoist Gracie, and then I was on and off with Hickson and Egan Machado, and back then that was when Egan Machado was called Egan Gracie in Horion's garage, and I knew I'd hit the gold mine. I could not believe how cool it was, what I had found. And again, this is 88, this is pre-UFC.
Right.
And it was $20 a private then, and of course, I'm in college, I don't have a lot of money, but whatever money I had went to the jiu-jitsu, because I found the art that I'd been looking for in my whole life, that I loosely even kind of had in my imagination. It's like from, watching professional wrestling and at the same time being a real wrestler, there's part of you that has kind of a subconscious imagination already of what the joint locks would be and all that stuff.
Right.
And then here I am, I found the real art, and it was that close, which is why I often say, I was in the right place at the right time. The circumstances of my life, I'll call it luck, chance, odds, free will, determinism, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time and happened to find the most effective martial art of its time, literally 4.5 blocks away.
Is that what drew you to it? Just the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu? Is that kind of the main thing that you just saw how... I've seen that's like a reoccurring theme. People just see these very physically not prominent. They just don't look like people that could beat you up, essentially. Yes. And then, when you look at Hoist Gracie in the first UFC, you're like, there's no way. I mean, I think he went against Ken Shamrock, who's absolutely just huge and muscular and athletic. Yes. And then Hoist is kind of skinny, 160-pound. Gi's kind of falling off of him, just didn't look like, throwing these push kicks. Didn't look like he had much of stand-up at all, and it just did whatever he wanted.
I remember watching UFC 1. I was a purple belt at the time.
Oh, wow.
There's probably 25 to 30 other purple belts in the entire United States, and like 4 non-Brazilian brown belts in the U.S., and I'm watching it with other martial artists who were non-jiu-jitsu guys. And I remember they were so convinced, he's going to lose this one, and I'd be like, I don't think so. Like I knew that, and the analogy I use a lot is, back in '88 when I had my a purple belt. It was like I had an AR with iron sights, and everybody else had a musket or a Mauser.
Yeah.
They had one shot, and if they missed that when they were reloading or whatever it is, they were all mine. And you just kind of knew, but back in the olden days, the only hard part was the entry. And once you made that clinch, you brought it on the ground, your odds went up 90% or higher.
Right.
You will win this as a purple belt against any other of the styles. And I had some challenge matches in the old days, which are whole other stories and stuff. And yeah, and even though I boxed, I did Muay Thai, karate, and all that, the entry was still the cautious part, because you knew once the grappling began, it was all yours.
Right. Chris, so you kind of knew before the UFC, you kind of knew what to expect. You kind of almost like you had the formula, so to speak. Like you kind of knew what Royce was capable of, and
yes, I absolutely did.
And you'd seen it before numerous times.
Yes, I mean, it's like, yeah, we all knew that Royce's odds of winning, like, I'm a science-oriented guy, and if I were to analyze the odds, it was most of the matches he had a 90 to 95% chance. A few of them were 75, 80. But the Savant guy who had really good kicks in
yes, oh god, I can't think of his name. Blonde, he was like Dutch or something.
Yes, I can't think of his name. I believe that was the one in which they had the most worry over. And again, it's that entry. And the big sumo guy, there wasn't, even though he didn't, or maybe fought the guy, I can't even remember. There wasn't much of a worry on that. It was almost like, you know how when you have a brand new white belt who's muscular, athletic, but who has no grappling background?
Yes.
They're often more of a pain in the ass because they're so unorthodox. Then the blue belt is like the easiest role if you're a black belt, because they know enough where they probably won't pull off some unorthodox back twisting bizarre escape out of your arm lock where you almost snap their arm. And so there was always that worry in the old days, that there would be some, incredibly strong, spastic guy who could escape. And then you would have to maybe re-enter or something. But yeah, it was good times.
Yeah. So what, as far as, like, where have you seen, and I like to ask this question, and you're kind of one of those old school guys, like, where have you seen, as far as jiu-jitsu now, like, exploded so much? And, I ask about the leg lock game, and what do you see? What do you think about it? Where do you feel like it's going? Obviously, it's going away from that whole self-defense mindset. It's more of a sport jiu-jitsu type, with a lot of these different guards.
Well, my philosophy on approaching all of the combat arts is street art and sport. I think there's a balance in there. It's almost like, in politics, where people say only the liberals are good, all the conservatives are bad, or the other way around.
Right.
I believe that all ideas, moves, concepts, philosophies have an inherent strength and an inherent weakness. And you can usually see what that is when you observe the extremes.
Okay.
You see both the weakness of the extreme and the strength of the extreme. And the sport, the jiu-jitsu side, is a very practical, developing thing that, okay, here's an analogy. If I took a very athletic, sport-only, never thought about self-defense, the street, or even MMA, the jiu-jitsu middleweight, a brown belt world champion.
Okay.
And he's never even thought about, how would this work on asphalt or any of that stuff. Within a month, you could train him how to have an effective self-defense / barroom brawl game. Very easily.
Yeah.
If you have that same guy who's done only self-defense style martial arts, you can't teach him in 3 months how to have a high-level athletic sport game. Okay? Now, at the same time, here's the thing, is you could say that that each of those opposing schools train other aspects of the mind and body. And let me think of an analogy that would work better. I use a clone analogy. Let's say I had you as you are right now, and I made an exact clone of you.
Uh-huh.
And your clone, I am going to spend the next 3 years with doing only the current 3 variation rule sets, IBJ, JF, Polaris style, whatever, sport, or grappling.
Okay.
That's the only kind you will train. Then I take your other clone and I train him in self-defense oriented style, right?
Okay.
And then I take one more clone of you and I stick him in an athletic building program with almost no martial arts at all.
Okay.
Just strength, explosion, endurance, core training, right? You're skilled. So who would win if I had a round robin between all these clones and you're already trained? Who do you think would win?
I mean,
it's hard to actually say, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you could pick. I guess there's reasons for each one.
Now, if we had the same you with 0 martial arts experience at all, I guarantee it would be between the guy who did sport with jiu-jitsu or the guy who did the street with jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And the guy who did athletics only would lose.
Sure.
So my point is clearly those two trump athletics, right?
Yeah.
So now, let's say we have that same untrained clone, and we give one of those guys, we give him a watered-down version of jiu-jitsu, a watered-down version of Muay Thai, and the bag hitting classes. We give the other guy vintage, classic, Gracie jiu-jitsu. And we give the other guy some wrestling, let's just say. Who's your money on? No rules fighting.
I'd say the jiu-jitsu guy.
I would too. And that's because modern MMA, the Americanized MMA, is as much of a sport as a sport what Jiu-Jitsu is.
Gotcha. I apologize about the sirens going off.
No, that's fine.
I'm out, man. I thought it was going to be quiet enough, but...
Oh, that's fine. So, like, who really knows? But, so, this also brings us in a rabbit hole of trying but to choose one. And
okay.
If I had to just choose one martial art, it would be what I'm going to call modern Jiu-Jitsu. Not postmodern sport, and not vintage 1979 style. I mean, like, right when there was some elements of the open guard, there was where the sport style of Jiu-Jitsu hadn't completely branched off into its own.
Chris, give me just a second. I'm going to go inside.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to...
Sure.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. I don't even hear it.
You don't hear it? I've got this microphone here, and this thing picks up everything. So you're saying modernized jiu-jitsu, so you're looking at kind of when they started playing the open guard.
Yeah, you see, I kind of call it, like, I mean, clearly these are just analogies and methods to understand the historical evolution.
Okay.
And I like to call what I say classical or vintage Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and you could say that could be exemplified by the Valente brothers.
Okay.
Which is like a very vintage classical Jiu-Jitsu style. Then you have modern Jiu-Jitsu style, which is basically all the same concepts and moves, but more engineered to face other Jiu-Jitsu athletes, not people outside of Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
That's when you go in to more what modern Jiu-Jitsu is. And that's the dawn of the sport. Let's compete against other Jiu-Jitsu athletes, not just have an art designed to beat thugs and kung fu and karate and boxing and all that stuff, right? Then the post-modern game is where the various rules of various sports have speciated off into almost their own thing. It's like I use the analogy a lot of judo and Greco. But Greco-Roman wrestling is the no-cloth version of their area of expertise is in the from the waist up, upper body clinch and throw without cloth. But judo's area of expertise is from the waist up, upper body cloth game, throws, clinch and throws. That's clearly their area of expertise.
Okay.
Those arts were originally preserved in that way because when you bend over, you get kneed in the face or an uppercut. So those arts, even though you are not allowed a punch, that those rules are added in so it won't quickly become wrestling ankle picks wearing gis.
Okay.
But even with those rules, it still eliminates the reality of a strike in the face, right?
Sure.
And sport IBJ, JF, or some no-gi rule event allowing heel hooks, even those eliminate the strike. So how do you effectively practice an art that allows for grappling and striking? And ultimately, the only answer of that, if you want to make a sport, is MMA.
Okay.
And really, even a brawl in the street is ultimately a sport. It's a sporting event that still has man-made cultural rules that are sometimes adhered to, sometimes broken. Most guys won't walk up and cold cock you to start the fight because they realize that ethically it means they didn't really win in a fair fight, right?
Sure.
Or they might say, I can't win this if I fight fair, therefore I'm mad at that guy enough, so I'm the cold cocker. But the observer still knows, and he knows that he didn't win the fight fair and square, whatever but that means, right?
Right.
So humans in the conflict, whatever it is, there's in essence always rules. Whether those rules are organized by some structure that is in essence a state making rules over how you are allowed to fight, the organizers of the competition, the athletic board, and that goes all the way to the Geneva Convention rules of warfare.
Right.
Pilots have a code that they shoot the down your aircraft, but not you in the parachute. There's rules to how humans fight. So the idea that there's such thing as no rules sports is also a concept that we could debate.
Right.
You know, and then I also like to throw out there that there's the man-made rules, and then there's the rules of the environment, which change everything. And if you have a very skilled, pro MMA guy who's not that bright but very skilled,
okay,
and he's used to the man-made rules, the man-made cage of his art, and you now throw him in a crowded alley where there's cars and poles and stuff, maybe he won't do as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just such a broad thing, all these martial arts, that, again, my philosophical approach is you think street, you train the sports, because that's how you get your skill, your strength, but timing, the test against a skilled opponent who knows how to escape your moves, who knows how to apply. You've got to train the sport, and you practice with the art.
Okay.
And the art is how do I control, submit, and or knock out my opponent utilizing the least amount of athletics and the maximum amount of knowledge and skill. The sport is how do I defeat my opponent within the rules of the game, utilizing the maximum amount of my knowledge and athletics. And a street is how do I survive and or win utilizing everything I've got, including outside of the rule set.
So, Chris, what do you think as far as training goes? Like, do you recommend people train a little bit of everything, gi, no gi? What do you think is like the sweet spot that people should train just to be well-rounded?
I think the sweet spot is an ever-shifting spot. I don't think it's a fixed location. I think it changes with your needs, the length of time in which you train, where you train, why you train. I think that's a pretty big spot. And within that spot, for me right now, as a 52-year-old guy who's already done a lot of sport, a competition, a lot less than some, but more than most. I've had my share of not very proud of it, but my share of brawls in the street. I was briefly a cop at a time. I put my hands on guys that needed to be in jail. I was in the military. So I feel I have a pretty well-rounded view of the martial arts as applied to various things in your life. If you're a woman who's learning martial arts to prevent yourself from being attacked and raped, let's say, your needs are totally unlike the 19-year-old ex-high school wrestler who misses the thrill of a competition, who misses the challenge of going and slapping hands in the crowd. Those needs aren't the same.
Right.
And you can't cram both of those people into the same package.
Okay.
You can have the same martial art, but their use of that art and what they emphasize in that art will not be the same needs. You could also have an older executive male who has no interest in the sport. And you might have a fired up woman athlete who wants to become one day black belt IBJJF world champ.
Sure.
And so, we also can't even say whose needs are what, right? So again, that's why I have an overarching philosophy of a balance of the art, which is where you explore, come up with new moves and all this stuff. The sport, where you train, work on the timing, the speed, you drill, you use what works, the high percentage moves, and then you think a street. I never, even when I'm involved in an IBJJF match, I've always, since I was a colored belt, whether they raise my hand that I won or my opponent's, I kind of always know in my head who won in the street. Let's say I spent most of the match on a top in a half guard. I couldn't pass. Finally, he gets me in a half guard, a sweep, and we end up in my guard. He scored, so he won. But really, in my head, I know I won that fight because I spent most of the match on top, punching him in the face.
Yeah.
And at the very end, he quote unquote gets me in a sweep, and now we're in my guard where I controlled his hands, head, and his hips the entire time.
Yeah.
In my mind, I won that fight.
Yeah.
And the problem in the sport is how do you score it without having strikes? How do you keep it real without strikes?
Uh-huh.
And that is a crux of the problem. And then with jiu-jitsu, you add the other thing, which is the guard, which is a paradox.
Uh-huh.
And that's why in the sport we debate the guard pull.
Okay.
Because a guard pull is like if we walk out in a match, I'm on my feet, you're on yours. Neutral, right?
Sure.
If a guard is neutral, then when you pull guard, you technically now are on a bottom. And as we know, on Earth with gravity, being on a top in a real fight generally beats being on bottom.
Yeah.
Generally beats it.
Generally, yeah.
So we have a paradox here that is an unresolvable thing because it truly is a paradox. Can you win in a brawl in an alley in the guard, yes.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
If you are a 119-pound woman, a brown belt,
Yeah.
being attacked by a non-grappler, big old large man, should you pull guard? Maybe, because he's going to be punching you in the face. It might end up on the ground anyways.
Right.
Why not pull guard while you're fresh, before you've been knocked onto the ground?
Sure.
So that would be a case where maybe she ought to pull guard. Maybe that would be what I call a guard pull as a tactic. The problem is when guard pulling becomes not a tactic, a strategy. Then you change the entire art. Because retreat is not a strategy, it's tactic.
Okay.
In a combat, retreating is not a strategy. It's a tactic. Because you don't win wars by retreating. But sometimes you have to retreat as a tactic, otherwise you die and lose. And so I always say, if you pull guard, which I do at times, never lose that sense of shame that you have chickened out of the stand-up fight.
Huh. That's an interesting point. Because, I mean...
You are chickening out of the stand-up fight, of the fight for top. You are chickening out of.
Okay.
You're bypassing that aspect, maybe for reasons that are smart, and maybe just because you're a chicken and don't want to face the stand-up fight.
Well, but what if, having something about guard, the guard position, essentially, if you flip it upside down, it's mount.
That's what I say. The guard is a mount in outer space. We're in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
But on planet Earth, with a gravity, being on a top generally beats being on a bottom in a real fight to the death match.
Okay.
Especially against completely unskilled guys. The thing is, once we start adding martial arts knowledge, the jiu-jitsu knowledge, suddenly the guard, the dynamic completely changes.
Yeah.
Completely, 100%. And the higher level we get, the more that does change. Now, in the open class matches, as a general rule, once the smaller guy's guard is passed, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. So the guard becomes, if you end up on the bottom, it becomes so important that you have a dynamic, attacking, unpassable guard. Because you're going to be there. Whether you fight for a top or not, there's going to be times where you're going to be in guard.
Okay.
Shit happens. Guard happens. You have to have a guard.
Right.
And it takes years to learn a guard. Years. You never really get the guard that you really want, no matter how long you practice, right? There's still more I'd like to work on to improve my guard. As I age, there's even more than there was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Out of my guard. So the art is limitless. It's never going but stop. Again, that's the paradox. Is we don't want to be in guard, but at the same time, we better have a guard.
Yeah.
But if we have a choice, we'll take top.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Chris, I mean, that's okay. Honestly,
Hold on a minute. And it's really loud. I got weed whackers out here. But I'm just rambling. So
no, I love it. This is great. Honestly, for me, like...
Loud?
I could hear something. It's okay.
All right.
Chris, I know you're this isn't ideal. There's a lot more I want to get into. I know apologize about the sound. I should have.
It's on my end is the bad sound.
Well,
These damn weed whackers.
Yeah. Is there? I know you're busy and everything. Is there a possibility to maybe reschedule and continue another time?
Yes.
That would be. I would.
Absolutely. 100%.
I apologize for. I can do whenever. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Kentucky, so I don't.
I love Kentucky. That's not the East Coast. That's the South.
Well, kind of.
I'm teasing.
Kind of the middle, I guess.
I know.
Have you been to Kentucky before?
I live out on the left coast.
Yeah, it is. It's eastern where you're at. Chris, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry that we had some.
No problem.
There's a. Hold on. This is my coach. Do you know?
He looks like a monster.
Nick Chewy Alvin.
Whatever, man. You're the monster.
It's my buddy.
Go kill somebody.
I'm about to go with him to kill some people.
About to go kill those little kids.
No, he still coaches the little kids. So
shoot me a text.
Okay.
Or my wife a text. We will plan in some evening hours.
That sounds great. Maybe we'll get into some maybe a little better sound quality. I apologize for the noise.
Problem. We'll go deep and white noise here with these weed whackers and.
Chris, this is an honor for me, man. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for about. Yeah, I hear that. That's okay. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since for about 8-9 years actually, and I'm a brown belt under Chewy. And you know, the funny like how everybody gets into jiu-jitsu and stuff is different, but that's who it was.
I love Chewy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's awesome, super nice guy. But like, you know, I used to watch. I'm originally from Russia, so my dad brought the VHS. I've been here since '89. I've been here, you know, my whole life pretty much. The VHS, UFC 6 in Denver, I think, was Oleg Taktarov.
Yeah,
It was like he was like the guy. You know, I loved obviously Hoist Gracie, and I was like, Oleg Taktarov. You know, we used to. That's some of the best memories, you know, for me, like watching that stuff with my dad and watching Bruce Lee movies, and a huge Jean-Claude Van Damme fan. I love Jean-Claude Van Damme.
You know, I really like that, the Kickboxer.
Kickboxer was awesome, and Bloodsport, of course, is everybody's favorite.
Bloodsport, yes.
That was Chris, man, I've watched some of your videos as far as like some of the things you say, and it's for me, it's. Jiu-Jitsu is such a variable sport with so many facets to it, and being able to train into your 50s, you know, and that's something as a physical therapist that always intrigued me. What can I do physically at a high level? And I think you can always do Jiu-Jitsu at some level, no matter your disabilities or your age, and I think it's the beautiful thing about it.
I think so.
So
it's the out of all of the combat sports, it seems to have the longest longevity.
Yeah, and it's incredible.
Muay Thai, boxing at 52, you're done.
Well, you're broken, or your brain doesn't work like it's supposed to. Yeah. So, yeah, man, it's and I wanted to kind of get into a little bit more about your injuries and actually your art as well, because I know you probably have a ton of injuries. And also, I wanted to kind of delve into, you know, art is one of the things that you kind of seems to. I've watched a video on you kind of like talking about your art and kind of how you've picked that back up. And I'm interested in how that plays into the whole person and, you know, not just jiu-jitsu. I think you guys have things outside of jiu-jitsu to get better at jiu-jitsu, I feel like.
Absolutely.
I think you can't just be jiu-jitsu all the time. I think there's got to be other things in your life that you do that complement or help jiu-jitsu. So, Chris, I'm eternally grateful, man. Thank you so much. It's an honor to speak with you, and I'll reach out maybe in a couple weeks or something. Give you, you know, I'll try to get something, you know, set up again.
We'll do it.
Anytime, you just let me know. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Out.
Thank you guys for checking out the podcast. Thank you again to my guest, Chris Haueter, who is awesome, and it was a pleasure having him on. And
we will have him on the podcast again to continue our discussion, kind of delve a little deeper into some of the topics we brushed upon. And thank you guys again. Check out JiujitsuTherapist.com for more videos and tips on injury prevention and strengthening. And thank you all for the support. Make sure to leave a review on iTunes, and we'll see you guys next time for another podcast.